You don't have to go through this holiday season fearing tantrums, meltdowns, eating too much, family conflicts, sleepless nights, gaining a lot of weight, and having to lose 12 pounds, 8 kilos in January. And autism symptoms, increased family conflicts, trauma in the family, buying too much, all the things that we do during Christmas, trauma responses, eating habits, and symptom triggers, we can actually stop that. And I want to give you everything that I've got, my best herbal tips, my best tips for your emotional well-being this Christmas, my best tips for you to remain stable throughout Christmas, your mood, your weight, your sanity, your spiritual health. I'm going to pile it all into one nice cup of brewed health and healing tips for you and hand it over so that you can sip it and use it to make Christmas easier this season. Let's dive in and make sure that you're staying till the end, because the two most scientific, epigenetic, and wild tips are at the end of this podcast episode. Let's start with the tantrums and the meltdowns and how you can avoid more symptoms like stimming, eloping, screaming, sleepless nights, and aggression, and anxiety in your child and anxiety in yourself, depression in your child and depression in yourself. Specifically, if you have a child with ADHD and autism, they can't tell you that that's what's going on. They'll just scream and make the scene chaotic. So the one thing that you need to understand is that most aggressive and behavioral and mood issues are actually either epigenetic or they are nutritional. And there are things that I want you to avoid this season so that you don't exacerbate symptoms. And it's really important to avoid things like glutamates. Now, glutamates are in a lot of foods. So I'll link to a guide in the description for this podcast. So when you go listen to this podcast, make sure you go to the description wherever you're listening to it, preferably on barefootautismwarriors.com, and look at the guide you can download there. I'll also link to a free Christmas cooking cookbook for you there as well. But glutamates are in a lot of things. They are in bouillon, they are in bone broth, they are in protein powder, they are in collagen powder. They are in everything that's really heat treated or that has taste enhancers in them. So it's not just when it's added the MSG, the glutamates to enhance taste. It's also in a lot of foods naturally that will trigger symptoms like aggression and anger, agitation, anxiety. So the things that are known as autism symptoms, basically. One thing that's really important, except from avoiding these food items, it's the sauces, it's the crisps, it's the chips, it's the crunchy candy, it's the wine gums, it is all the things like the soy sauces, all fermented foods, all cheeses can contain a lot of glutamates. But one of the things that people don't think about is that when you have unstable blood sugar because you're eating too much in this season, it actually enhances the glutamate receptors, and it makes the glutamate induce symptoms worse. So all this piling on of sugar and overeating in this season will give your child more symptoms if you're not careful. And I'll tell you what to do to prevent that without having some of the fun and some of the great desserts and all that stuff. So an unstable blood sugar is really linked. So glutamates, gluten of course, dairy of course, glutamates are linked to behavioral issues and an unstable blood sugar as well. And we want to avoid that as well because many of our children are actually struggling with hangover-like symptoms because the liver is so incredibly harmed by the amounts of refined carbohydrates that we are exposed to in the holiday season. So I really want you to make sure that you're limiting it to the Christmas dinner, maybe New Year's Eve, and then make sure that you're eating real foods throughout December and throughout January, where you're eating breakfast at the same time, lunch at the same time as usually, and dinner. And make sure that you get the fats, you get the good sources of protein, animal-based protein, you get some starchy vegetables, you get some fruits and some green leafy vegetables and vegetables in general. And no starvation, no fasting, no purging and punishing yourself for the food that you've been eating. Back to normal eating the next day. But this whole idea of living in extremes, where you are either extremely unhealthy and then extremely healthy, is really damaging to your metabolism. And is really damaging to your emotional well-being as well. This whole idea of punishing yourself and shaming and guilting yourself and depriving yourself from the nutrients that actually feed the microbiome, so that the microbiome will call for the real healthy foods that you actually need for your brain, for your hormones, for your bones, for your mental well-being, and your child as well. So in order to avoid anxiety, depression, ADHD and autism symptoms, avoid glutamates in the food. Download the guide in the description. Avoid a lot of copper in the food as well. If you're someone who's gluten-free and dairy-free, this can happen a lot if you are replacing dairy with plant-based milks, or with a lot of nut butters and nut bread and nut desserts rammed with copper. Copper is linked to anxiety, severe anxiety, agitation, anger, aggression, and also to postnatal depression and to all of these autism symptoms that are really hard to deal with during the holiday season. So collagen powders, which we will we'll hear a lot about in January when people want to get healthy after having been eating too much. Or it's also very prevalent in bone broth, in protein powders. And there's another thing in autism families that you need to really be careful with, and that is methylation. 90 to 98% of children with autism are undermethylated. So they are already high in histamine, low in methyl. And this affects neurotransmitters, enzymes, and hormones, and it affects mood. So it causes tantrums, causes aggression, eloping, stimming, screaming, sleepless nights, nonverbal autism, all these symptoms that you have no idea what to do with. And it's actually exacerbated by many of the health foods and multivitamins and methylated B vitamins that many people are giving. I've made a lot of podcast episodes about that. I'll link to those at the end of this episode as well and in the description. But just for now, I want you to know that bone broth, yogurt, high folate-rich vegetables, methylated B vitamins, fermented foods, including the gelatin, the bone broth, the kimchi, all these things, the probiotics will cause an exacerbation of the symptoms that are caused by undermethylation. So it is a layer deeper than high histamine when you talk about it like this. You need to understand that when you donate folate into the cell of someone who's already undermethylated, it actually depletes the cell from folate on a nucleus level. So it's really something where you need to understand how to tailor the diet to this specific child and to these specific needs. But for now, for this season, I want you to understand that fermented foods, cheese, and collagen and protein powder and high folate vegetables plus multivitamins plus methylated B vitamins can make matters worse for these children, including probiotics. So it's really something I love educating moms in, because it's something that can really give more peace around the dinner table and in the family if we understand how to tailor the nutrition to the child's bio-individual needs. For this holiday season, just avoid these foods and just eat real normal food. I know that there is a problem when it comes to histamine, when it comes to bouillon, when it comes to sauces during the holiday season, just so that you know that when you feed these things, including soy sauce, by the way, many spices also contain these things, and histamine is in leftovers as well. So fresh food is really a good idea in the holiday season. It's just that so that you understand that if you're feeling anxious, if you're feeling depressed, and if you are seeing your child having a lot of symptoms and tantrums and meltdowns, maybe you want to consider removing the high histamine and the high glutamate foods. Again, download the list in the description for this podcast episode if you're confused about what foods they are. Because sometimes it's just not worth it. It's better to give your child some other types of food. And it's not to become extreme with the diets either, because God created us to eat real foods made from scratch. The meats, the fruits, the vegetables, the berries, the good fats, some nuts and seeds, but not a load of seeds, so that you have all your milks and your bread and all your desserts based on nuts that are high in copper and will cause more aggression. So it's really logical when you think about it. But for you as well as a parent, if you are suffering from anxiety and depression, it's good to know that maybe it's not your life that just is hard and horrible and dark. Maybe it is your almond milk or your almond butter or your nut desserts or the crisps and the chips and the coated nuts that you had over Christmas, or the marzipan or whatever it is that you're doing, or the sauces. And it's good to know, because when you remove it and you get more peace, that's actually so relieving. Some of the things that can help you overcome the symptoms of this is Alka-Seltzer. You can take that after having a meal that's high in all these foods. And if you're just watching this video because you're coming across it because these are the issues that you're having, you can take that, and I'll link it in the description as well. And olive oil really is great because it increases the DAO enzyme that breaks down histamines. So that's really good if you want something that works quick and that is an urgent help for you if you're in that situation. I want to share this amazing tonic that I'm using. Berberine. It comes in many shapes and forms. I love this type of berberine. It's a tonic that I use, and it is amazing for lowering the blood glucose impact on food that you're eating. So if you take a little shot of this before your meal, if you're having a dessert or even after, it really lowers the impact on your blood sugar and the impact when it comes to the insulin reactions, which is what stores fat. If you're having a lot of sugar and you can't actually, if you don't have the capacity to utilize the sugar so that it doesn't come into the cells, but it turns into fat instead. And this happens if we're having a lot of sugar during the season. But in general, this berberine is amazing for many other things. People use it for cancer. It's great for the immune system. It's great for weight management and blood sugar control. So I really recommend this, and I get it from hyperactive.co.uk. I'm not affiliated with them, and I'll link to them as well in the description for this podcast. So you can use that when you're having these meals. And then it's really important to stick to your circadian habits. Go to bed the way that you normally would. I go to bed between 9 and 10. And stick to your routines. Get outside every day. Get sunlight. Movement outdoors is really important for your children. Don't place them in front of screens during the season, because that will exacerbate symptoms as well. And it will decrease the peace in your family. So the more daylight you can get in these winter months, particularly if you live in a dark area like I do in Denmark, you need to get outside in the AM hours and before the sun goes down. So do that in the morning and do that in the afternoon. Go to bed early, get up and get your breakfast, eat your lunch and eat your dinner, and eat real foods for those meals throughout the holiday season. Then it's fine for the body. Body should be able to be metabolically flexible enough to handle a couple of meals or 3 or 4 during this holiday season, especially with the berberine on top, without a lot of problems linked to it. But when you have a child that's got a lot of symptoms, you might be more careful with the things that you're serving during Christmas and making sure that you're not using alternatives to dairy and gluten and sugar that's actually making things worse. Because also the alternative sugar products, the fiber syrup and stuff, are also high in glutamates. So that's the basic biochemical tip. Now to the emotional, epigenetic, scientific tips that has to do with conflicts, stress, and how that impacts your child's symptoms during Christmas. Okay, so this is so interesting. So epigenetic impact on your child's behavior. Scientific studies show that you are a stress buffer for your child, meaning mom's health and well-being and mom's peace directly impacts your child's behavior and your child's health, right down to immune system, gut health, detoxification pathways, hormonal health. And this is why you need to maintain your peace during the holiday season. So the epigenetic impact on your child means that your child is an extension of you. And again, I'll link to all the science behind this in the description, and a great book for you to read as well in the description. But if you are stressed out about family members, about trauma that you haven't processed around your family members, if you're holding resentment or unforgiveness, and if you're battling with family members, even maybe considering not seeing them because there's been a lot of bad thing happening or maybe abuse in your family in the past, your lack of peace can impact your child's behavior in a negative way and your child's health in a negative way in the methylation aspect as well. So if you're stressed out and if you don't know how to deal with it spiritually and with peace in your heart, which is my next point, my next tip I want to share with you after I've just mentioned this, your child's behavior will get worse and health will get worse because your child is already impaired when it comes to methylation, which affects neurotransmitters like dopamine and enzymes, which affect your child's digestion and gene expression and hormones. So we know also that when your breathing and your heart rate is impacted in a negative way because you're stressed out and you're in fight and flight, which a lot of us are during the holiday season, your child will mimic that heart rate, will mimic that breathing pattern, and that will also cause problems in the immune system, in the gut health, and therefore impact your child's behavior, because you know how the gut and the immune system is linked to bad behavior and aggression and meltdowns and all the autism and ADHD symptoms. So your peace is precious. Now, how do you get to a peaceful place? That's the spiritual component, and this is the most important and most effective way for you to ensure a peaceful holiday season. Let's get to that tip right now. This one is huge, and this has changed the way that I coach moms in my autism turnaround program, by the way, and it has just exploded the results that we are getting and the symptoms that we are turning around, understanding the spiritual aspect of this. So peace leads to health, and it leads to stable mood in you and in your child. What's the opposite of peace? Dis-ease. This is a wisdom, it's a piece of wisdom that is all over the Bible. And I'm training right now as a ministry teacher, Bible teacher, with specialized skills when it comes to understanding the biblical application of this. So if stress is causing dis-ease, stress is the opposite of peace. Stress is linked in science to all mental health and physical diseases like cancer and heart problems, immune system issues. And we already know that your child is mimicking all that just by being near you because of those epigenetic influences, that the children are literally an extension of us. So stress is linked to dis-ease in the body and in the mind and in your family and in your child. So what is it that steals peace? We know that in the Bible it says that a heart at peace gives life to the body, but envy rots the bones. So a heart that is not at peace is literally rotting the bones, rotting your health, and also affecting your child's health negatively. Bear with me, because I want to prove this and hold this up against scripture. What creates peace? We know that a person who walks in peace with God and self and others are actually exhibiting the fruit of that walk in peace. We know that the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, forgiveness, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. What are some of the things that really destroy that in your family, and particularly during the season? It's bitterness. It is unforgiveness. And I know a lot of us, myself included, we've been through a lot of trauma and abuse and bad experiences in our families. And our flesh, our personality, our emotions want justice, and we want other people to see our perspective, and we want other people to respect us and understand our children. But that is our soul. That is the soul that longs for the flesh, that is so bound up in the world and bound up in emotions. But that is actually not giving us peace. What gives us peace is Holy Spirit in us. And Spirit in us, the Holy Spirit, longs for God, and God is love, and God is grace, and God is peace. So it's the opposite of wanting justice and wanting respect and holding resentment and bitterness, no matter what has happened in your life and in your past. And how destructive that is seen in the opposite of the fruit of the Spirit, which is anger and strife and bitterness. And I want to show you examples of that. So the fruit of the Spirit is in Galatians 5:22-23, which is what I just read to you. And in Ephesians 4, it says, "Be completely humble and gentle, be patient and bearing with one another in love. Make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit. Through the bond of peace, there is one body and one Spirit." So there's another verse that's really important for us to understand when it comes to this. And this is something that this season has just been crazy for me, because I've had a peace in my life and a contentment with small and little things, which I think is so important for you to understand in this season too. That it's a season where we're eating a lot, we're buying a lot, we want to give a lot of presents. And some people feel unsatisfied with what they're giving and with what they're getting. And afterwards we feel completely empty, because we've eaten all these things and we've bought all these things, and nobody's satisfied anyway. And it's not God's way what's happening in the holiday season with the gluttony and the overspending and the focus on consumption and the conflicts that we have in the families either. It's the opposite, and we see that in Philippians 4:11, where it says, "I'm not saying this because I am in need, for I have learned to be content, whatever the circumstances," meaning whatever trauma you've experienced, whatever gifts you're not getting, whatever you can't afford, whatever symptoms your child is suffering from right now. Contempt, whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do all this through Him who gives me strength. So through Christ, through Jesus, through God who gives us strength, we can be content in every situation. And we need to seek peace, and we need to forgive, and we need to stop being bitter towards our family members if we want to be healthy, because the opposite literally makes us sick, and it makes your child sick as well, and it destroys this season for you. So listen to this important verse in 1 Timothy 6 verse 4 to 12 about contentment. So the opposite of that is mentioned in this verse first. They are conceited and understand nothing. They have an unhealthy interest in controversies and quarrels about worlds that result in envy, strife, malicious talk, evil suspicions. And we see this a lot in the truth movement and in the focus on the evil that's going on in the world, and in strife in families as well, like they experienced back in the early churches. And constant friction between people of corrupt mind who have been robbed of the truth and who think that godliness is a means to financial gain. We see that in politics, we see that in churches, we see that in the New Age, we see that in the health industry, we see that in the alternative health industry as well. But godliness with contentment is great gain, for we brought nothing into this world, and we can take nothing out of it. But if we have food and clothing, we will be content with that. And that's what I feel in this season. That's all I need. Food and clothing, roof over my head, and I'm content. I'm happy. I don't need all the things, all the food, all the stimulants, all the acknowledgement. And you can too. Seek the word, seek the truth. Listen to this. Those who want to get rich fall into temptation and a trap, and into many foolish and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. Some people, eager for money, have wandered from faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. But you, man of God, flee from all this and pursue righteousness, godliness, faith, love, endurance, and gentleness. Fight the good fight of the faith. Take hold of the eternal life to which you were called. So we are called to peace. We are called to love. God's love pours into us, and it's supposed to affect the way that you look at yourself and treat yourself with love. We're supposed to love our neighbors as we love ourselves. You cannot love your child or love your family if you don't love yourself. That love that God pours into you, that changes the way that you look at and treat yourself, will then pour out onto your children, onto your family members. And that is what we are called to do. And that is the purpose of Christianity, is that God is seen and people are receiving the love through you that is God. God is love. So if we don't love our family members, if we're bitter against our family members, it is like cancer. It's like weed. It's spreading and it's suffocating health. It's suffocating your life. It's suffocating happiness. It's suffocating your turnaround process and the healing process. And it's destroying this season. So the number one nourishment that will change this season for you, change your child's symptoms, minimize anxiety, minimize tantrums and meltdowns, minimize conflicts in your family, and give you peace, is the truth in the Bible. So get yourself a Bible and start reading the New Testament. Luke is a good idea. 1 John is a good idea. Matthew is great to start with. You can read through that during this holiday season. And then pray over your family, pray over your children, and really understand the fruit of the Spirit, which will take you through this season. We are doing a prayer in our Bible study group where we are asking that grace, love, and peace will flow into the lives of others through me. That's a prayer that you can pray as well. So I'm wishing you a peaceful season, and I hope that this was useful. I really hope that this episode brings you peace, not just this season, but in general. And if you want the guide to get your hands on the food list that you need to avoid if you don't want tantrums and meltdowns this season and in general, go to barefootautismwarriors.com/podcasts with an S /185 for this podcast episode. And also, we're coming to the end of this year. And when you're listening to this, you might look back and think, okay, what I'm doing is actually not working when it comes to turning my child's symptoms around and changing my life in a way that's lasting. And if that's something you want to do, send me an email. I want to teach you how you can understand what's triggering your child's symptoms. And not only that, how you can look at your child and understand each symptom. What is the message behind it? And how can I address that message so that my child can get less symptoms and more independence, and I can get my peace and independence back as well? I don't want you to fear going out shopping. I don't want you to fear the next meltdown. I don't want you to fear dying before your child because you don't know how your child's going to manage without you. It's not what you deserve. If you want to become an expert by lived experience, if you're not the quick fix type and you're tired of the protocols, the extreme diets, all the tests, all the mom Facebook groups, all the practitioners, all the protocols, and you want to do something that is tailored to your child, you want to become an expert in reading your child's symptoms and adjusting accordingly, you should send me an email at contact@barefootautismwarriors.com. And I'm telling you, send me an email because I don't want to work with moms who feel that is too exhausting, because honestly, if that is too much for you, you're not going to turn symptoms around for your child with me, because it is a marathon. You're going to have to put in way more effort than sending me an email and looking me up. So contact@barefootautismwarriors.com. That email is actually an application. It's the way that I filter out the moms that are not serious about this and choose the moms that I really enjoy working with. I have very few seats throughout the year because I only let new moms on board when someone else leaves. I have a small group of moms that I take through the steps that got my child from sleepless nights, eloping, screaming, nonverbal autism, aggression, rigidity, lining things up, picky eating, sensory issues, to a neurotypical life in independence as an adult with none of those symptoms. So contact@barefootautismwarriors.com to talk to me about this. barefootautismwarriors.com. Click on the program or click on the podcast for the latest episode. And for this episode's podcast description, it is Barefoot Autism Warriors /podcasts with an S, and then 185 for this episode. Hey, if you liked this episode, I would really appreciate if you rated it, gave me some stars wherever you're listening to the podcast, subscribing to this podcast, downloading the episode helps me spread the word to all the moms who don't know that autism can be turned around, and that these symptoms are messages, and that these children are messengers from God. So, until next time, where we're talking, the next episode is going to be about a roundtable talk. Moms that are currently going through the turnaround process, they're going to come on, talk to you about the hopes and the struggles that they're going through as they're turning symptoms around for their child. And after that, the next episode will be about the turnaround program, where you'll understand whether it's for you or not. Until then, take care and stay peaceful.